Protest, drug test, and one leaves the nest. Let's talk about the latest episode of The Conners. Hey everybody, Dan here with Dan Reviews It, and yes, we're going to talk about The Conners and their latest episode, which will be the final one of 2020. There's going to be a new one, not for another 5 or 6 weeks. January 13th will be our next week back with The Conners, so I think that is 6 weeks from now, so, I don't know if they'll just rerun the 6 that we've gotten so far, or more likely there's going to be some holiday specials and some other things on. Maybe they'll repeat a couple of them, but unlikely they're probably going to redo all of them. But anyway, our next episode will be January 13th, so let's leave this hopefully on a high note. Let's see what happened in tonight's episode of The Conners. Now, before we get started, please do subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love to have you as a part of the channel, and if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button below and comment as well. I love interacting with you guys about these episodes, and I love hearing your thoughts on how you felt the episode went. Sometimes, wide disagreements with my synopsis and or my feelings, and sometimes in agreement. But either way, I love hearing from you. So do comment below, of course. So anyway, the title again, Protest, Drug Test, and One Leaves the Nest. So I had a couple ideas going into this. I figured the drug test would have something to do with Wellman Plastics. I didn't know exactly how it would come off as it did, but One Leaves the Nest I thought really was going to be Harris, and turns out nobody has really left the nest by the end of this episode, but certainly we've had a couple of people, Louise and Harris, at various times in the episode, we're talking about taking off and, Louise going back to her own place and Harris sort of staying with the Occupy protesters. But we'll get to all of that. Let's do the general synopsis. So basically, this leads back to what we had last week on the show. We have Alexandra Billings, who you may know from Transparent, or if you saw last week's Conners episode, you know her from that. And she is the new boss, Robin. And she actually is a big part of the drug test plot. So essentially last week, if you'll remember, Becky and Darlene were in a big fight because Darlene is attempting to go for a promotion at work, become one of the managers, and Becky is not having it because she's not getting along with Robin, and so Darlene sort of chooses work over Becky, so Becky thinks anyway, and ends up writing her up and docking her pay, and that is introduced right in the first scene of this episode. So even if you missed last week's show, you would be caught up, which I really liked, because they've never really done like previously on Roseanne or previously on the Conners, because they assume that everybody's kind of keeping up. But in case somebody did miss last week, they sort of laid out in that first scene basically what happened, at least between the sisters. But the protest part actually comes in the first scene as well, but we'll talk about that because the main story really is the drug test and the Wellman Plastic stuff, so I want to stay on that first. But so anyway, Robin returns as the boss, and she basically puts up a sign saying, look, we're going to have mandatory drug tests, and not only that, they're going to be monitored drug tests. Somebody's going to literally watch you go to the bathroom to make sure you're clean and all of this. And she's not having it. She says, look, I'm not in favor of this. I'm not doing it, and in fact, I'm going to quit. So Becky is talking to Aunt Jackie, who is there selling sandwiches, which is fantastic because, first of all, as just a quick aside about Aunt Jackie and everything, of course, her and Roseanne worked at Wellman in the first season of the original Roseanne, but what's great is that the producers of The Conners have brought back one of the original actresses from the Wellman Plastic days in Evelina, I think is the first name, Fernandez, and Juanita is her character's name on the show, and I don't really remember her. I mean, they had sort of various people, kind of coming in and out of Wellman Plastic, but really it was the core that you remember, which would be Roseanne, Jackie, Crystal, Anne Marie, and then of course Booker, played by George Clooney. But this Juanita was in the original show, and she's played by the same actress here, which I think is awesome. I love that they're sort of still nodding their hat a little bit to the old days, and Jackie recognizes her, so they have a little back and forth, which is funny. But anyway, Jackie's there when Robin posts the drug test thing and announces she's going to quit, and Jackie's like, well, it's obvious why she's quitting. She's an addict, and she's, not going to pass the test. So against her maybe better judgment, they don't really discuss it with us, the audience. We never see Becky's thought process, but Becky decides to pay Robin a visit at the office, and they even had, a few little barbs at each other in that earlier scene, about, oh, it's been great working with all of you except for Becky, which was, a funny line, but Becky really, because she is a recovering addict herself with alcohol, she comes to Robin and says, look, I get it. I'm in recovery. I, had to quit drinking because I got pregnant and this and that and the other thing. If you need somebody, I'm here for you. If you need to go to a meeting, I'm here for you. And Robin confides in her that, well, no, it has nothing to do with that. It is that I'm trans, and I, don't really need people knowing about that. That's my private life and this and that and the other thing. So that's why she's going to quit. So couple things about that before I continue on with the story itself. So we discussed this last week, that the actress Alexandra Billings is herself trans. She was part of the TV show Transparent. A lot of the roles she's had over the years have been of a trans person, but not all. So, it's funny. One of my comments from last week's episode from Melpy was like, oh, I don't know if this person is playing a trans woman on this show, but, I've seen her in other things playing trans. And I commented back, well, I don't think so. I don't think that's part of the character. But here we are. Yes, it is. And so they actually, because of her own history, she helped sort of craft some of the lines that she says. When she talks about having PTSD, and she talks about some of the other things. Those are, things that the actress directly said, that they've sort of incorporated in the script, which I think is fantastic. Look, I'm a gay man, and as, Roseanne, the original series, first was on, there was a lot of, gay-friendly stuff within that show. You had the kiss with Muriel Hemingway. You had, of course, the Sandra Bernhard character. You had Leon. So, the Connors, Roseanne, whatever, has always been very forward-thinking with that kind of stuff. And I find not preachy about it. Like certain other shows that I might mention, Blackish comes to mind. Blackish I really enjoyed for the first few seasons, but, and I still do watch it, but it's become a lot more preachy and a lot less comedic over the last few years, and really sort of in your face. And I've never really felt that the Connors is that way, and I don't think it's being so here either. Mark, is a gay character, and this whole season it hasn't even been mentioned. Like, it's barely touched upon because it doesn't define who he is. And I think that's always been the most important part of how Roseanne and the Connors deals with that sort of thing, is that it's never the defining characteristic about the character. So I have to give them credit for that. And I love this storyline as well. So essentially what happens is Becky organizes a protest with Aunt Jackie in tow. She's saying, oh, we're not going to take this, and a couple of the people are like, dude, you don't even work here anymore. Like, what are we doing? But, she just wants to be part of something, good old Jackie. So, she helps Becky, and we hear from one of the higher up Wellman people. In fact, one of the actual Wellman descendants comes in and says, look, hey, we're doing this drug test, what can we do? And so they said, well, our issue is, we don't want to go to the bathroom in front of strangers, So he basically assigns Becky to do it. And so, okay, great, we're all happy with this, let's go back to work. And as such, Robin decides to stay, which is great, and they've already confirmed that the actress will be appearing in a few more episodes. She's already shot several more episodes. So she will be joining us back when the season resumes, which I think is great, because she thus far is some sort of a foil for Becky, but now they have this interesting relationship where Becky is pretty much the only person she's, told that she is trans. So Becky might, have that sort of over her head, but at the same time, she's definitely not going to ride Becky nearly as hard, I think, as she has in the past, because they've now shared this little bond. And look, Becky opened up to her about her alcoholism too, so they both have something, sort of not secretive, because of course Robin jokes that she's the fourth person that's already told her about the alcoholism. So Becky's alcoholism is not a secret, but they share a little bond, because they both were being vulnerable with each other and whatever, and I would love to see that progress as the season continues. So in the very last scene, we see Darlene and Becky sort of sitting at the kitchen table and talking about what happened and the resolution, and Becky said, well, I'm not going to actually do it, I'm just going to say that I did, like, I don't really care what's going on with these people. So it sort of resolves that way. But so that's the drug test part, and really part of the protest part, because that was one protest, but then the other protest is from the beginning of the episode, where people are protesting in downtown Chicago and talking about the wealth and the 1% and all of that kind of stuff. And Harris decides, look, I want to be a part of this. I'm young and I have opinions, and I feel like the generations ahead of me kind of screwed my generation, so I'm going to go out. And at first, Darlene is all for it, but at the end of the day, the truth is that people in lower income areas can't really afford to protest, because they can't afford to take the day off of work to do it. And indeed, Dan needs the rent, so she convinces Harris, look, you gotta come back and go to work tomorrow, and this and that and the other thing. And at the same time, we've got Louise, who has been there more or less, I guess, since COVID started. I'm sure she's gone home, from time to time, but largely she has been staying there, and she's getting kind of fed up with things, and her privacy and all of that. So she decides to leave, which could be the leaving the nest. I mean, Harris also threatens to stay with the Occupy people, so there's a couple of leave the nest scenarios, but Louise decides at the end of the episode to come back, because she misses Dan's cuddling, and they don't sleep well together without each other. So it's very cute, nice way to sort of wrap that up. But a couple other things in this episode. So with Harris and owing the rent, well, we finally get some sort of closure, I think, on the foreclosure storyline from the very first episode of the season. And look, by the end of that episode, they sort of were like, okay, Dan's going to have people pay rent, da-da-da-da-da. But I wasn't sure how much that was going to really, pay their mortgage. Are they still going to be in trouble? Apparently not, as long as everybody continues to pay rent, and he has Ben for rent at the beginning of the episode, and Darlene in the middle, and then Harris at the end. So clearly everybody is pretty much pulling their weight. We didn't see anything about Becky, but that's okay. But I think they answered all of my questions, with those couple of scenes. But Harris and Dan don't really have it out. More like Harris comes home angry that she had to leave the protest, so she throws the check in his face or whatever, and Darlene starts yelling at her, and don't talk to your grandfather this way, and this and that and the other thing. And Harris, kind of badmouths Dan back, and he's like, look, I apologize, this is, my fault, and da-da-da-da-da, I'm ashamed to have to ask you for rent, but I do, and, Roseanne wanted me to get life insurance, and I stupidly didn't, and this is all my fault, da-da-da. It was a very, very real moment, and very touching, and look, I think many of us have been in financial issues during COVID. I certainly have had my share, and I found the sentiment of the Dan character to be incredibly real, and I'm welling up just talking about it, because I know how I have felt, with a lot of the money issues going on with since COVID started. And look, it's taken a lot of jobs, it's taken a lot of businesses, and all of that. And I think, look, if any TV family is going to really tackle it, it's this one, and I think they did it brilliantly. I think they tackled both topics in this episode brilliantly. The money crisis, and as well the trans and the privacy sort of stuff with that. I think they handled both sides of it brilliantly. So I really liked that a lot. And on top of all that, this was a very funny episode. I think this is probably maybe the second funniest that they've had so far this season. Jackie was just on top of it. Laurie Metcalf, obviously, always funny, but sometimes they put her way too over the top. The wacky Jackie sort of vibe. And tonight we got, like, for me, the perfect balance of that. Because she was definitely getting there, with the whole protest stuff, and she was reminiscing about pressing her butt up against the window when Becky's school was coming in for a tour and falling out the window because she was high. And we get a really, at the beginning of the episode, I was like, oh, I don't know, because she was really talking about, I'm a big protester, and look, I got 3 piercings in my ear, and that she's trying to show Mark to impress him. And I thought, okay, that might be bordering on the wacky Jackie stuff, but then the rest of the episode, she was just a riot, sort of reminiscing about things, and then wanting to be a part of the protest that she clearly has no business being in. She doesn't work there, just wants to be part of something. That's the Jackie that I like. And at the same time, look, she's working hard. She's doing the sandwich deliveries and all of that. So we saw literally, other than DJ and Mary, which of course, as I continue to say, are completely useless to this entire series. We didn't see them at all once again this week or last week. Apparently Mary was in like one scene for one line or something, but I missed it enough that I didn't even say it. In my review last week I said she wasn't in it, but a couple of you on the comments said no, she actually was, so that proves how important her character is. But they weren't here again. But other than that, everything else gets touched on in this episode, because we talk a little bit about Ben and his hardship with the magazine, just a little bit. We talk just a wee bit about Becky and the baby and Emilio, because she FaceTimes them before her break is over. So almost everything has been hit in this one episode, and I was really hoping for something like this. I was hoping that before we went to break for the winter that we would get some sort of wrap up on some of these storylines, and I think we had a really, really great wrap on pretty much everything that this season has been building to. Last week's episode, the worst of the season so far. I think this episode, the best of the season so far. I am really curious on how you guys felt about it, though, because sometimes I don't know. After a bad one, I know that I probably get a little bit biased with the next one, because I'm like, I want it to be good so badly after a rotten episode that maybe I convince myself it's good, but I don't know. I loved the scene at the end with Dan and Harris and Darlene. I felt that. I thought that was so real and well scripted and well acted, of course, by John Goodman. That goes without saying. But I thought that the trans stuff about the drug test was also really real, and I love that they really got Billings to open up about her own experience with the producers and the writers to craft her character's story a little bit more, appropriately or whatever. So this for me was a huge winner. I've said it at least a dozen times. I'll say it again. DJ and Mary, just get them out of the show. They're useless. They can pop in every now and then, but they don't need to be regular cast members. I think this core cast that they have now, and I'm including Louise and Ben in that, even though Katie Seagal is not a opening credits person as J.R. Ferguson has become. But I think this really is the core of the show, and this is everything that the Conners is about. And I think it was executed very, very well tonight. So I leave this latest episode of The Conners with an A. the best one of the season so far for me, and I've been saying it just about every week. I hope this is building to something. I hope this is building to something, and I think I was very satisfied with all of the stories that they've talked about this season, sort of coming to a head here. Not really much about Mary living there, which apparently she is. If she is, where the heck is she? I don't see her, but but other than that, which is a storyline that I could have cared about if I cared about the characters more. And I think it was great for the one episode they did it, but yeah, I'm really glad that we got this episode. It made me very happy, and I felt that we're going into this winter break on a high note. So I'm very happy about that. January 13th is the return of the Conners, so we will have a new review for you then. But of course, comment below. Thank you so much for joining me as always, and we'll see everybody next time. Bye.